The creation and administration of contracts to hire staff and look after their welfare during their time at the company falls with human resources, and creating contracts falls under the contracts tab that takes us directly to a list of all employment contracts. This has got them listed by status, draft meaning that they're still being put together, final meaning that they're accepted, not issued are particularly for local staff who are working under the local conditions and don't work under a foreign type of contract. And then there's those that are made as an offer so that you can track what is happening with each. And you'll see how this is set up is we have the number of the contract. We're starting to number them by year and sequential number, the name of the teacher, the status, if it's an active teacher, candidate, and so on. We just put them in short form because it's not necessarily used. And this is contract number of the employee. This is the employee's number one. So if we were to have a second contract for Ms. Monahan, Ms. Amy, we would go over to here to the new contract section, click the plus button, and it will then create a second contract for her. In this case, it is in a draft format. It is a start date for August the 1st, 2017, end date August 31st, and her monthly salary is $2,100. That's just a guess. It might not be that at all. And then the salary for the local, we have just some of them down here that were put in a long time ago. I don't know if these aren't necessarily correct numbers. They're just working numbers. And then we have Schedule 1 and the contract. The Schedule 1 is the heart of the contract negotiations and settlement, because we have placed on that schedule every element that really involves the hiring and employment of the person. And the contract is the actual text. So these links take you to those two documents. And this is the open PDF. Is once the PDFs are created, you'll see it says PDF at work. So let me just start by creating a new employment contract. It immediately jumps us straight from here. Confirm new employment contract. Choose employee name on the next screen, which is Schedule 1. So it immediately comes up to the Schedule 1 to employment, and there's no employee chosen yet. It's got defaulted to contract number 1. Contract status is default. It's numbered 2017, number 32. Its initial status is set as not issued. Now the first thing we have to do is choose an employee. And all these highlighted yellow things are things that need to be completed. So we can then choose, and I'll choose somebody who, Jazz Takar. Oh, no, let's do Peter Wang. Okay. So we'll choose Peter Wang. Okay, he's got his James Bond photograph in here so that you can have a little chuckle. Anyway, his status is he's an active staff, and that's, of course, incorrect, but he's one of my test cases. And we choose a start date. So, for example, most people will start at the 1st of September in a year for a year's contract. It then automatically defaults it ahead 365 days, which is actually not September the 1st next year, it's October 31st next year. We also have the format of the date in the date, month, year format that's used in Asia. The contract term in this case is just a nominal value, 1 year. It could be any one of these months, or it could be a year and a half. And the start work date would be September the 1st. Okay. The probation period is nominally set to 90 days. That's typical. It's 90 calendar days from the time they start work. It could be 30 or 60 or 120 or more. So if we leave it at 90, and we can also, there's also an option to put them in as working days. They then have to calculate the date out here because it's very complicated with working days. But it then ends, in this case, on November the 30th, 2017. We found this to be the most satisfactory system because it's just a simple matter of, I started September the 1st, I got 90 days. Anybody can calculate that. If you start working days, nobody can calculate them out unless you've got a computer. The position was already set on our the previous setup when you set the candidate up or the staff up. So it's a teacher foreign. Their local or foreign is basically determines their position here, and the department they're in is teaching. That's been preset. Their duties are shown as, in this case, we actually just changed that, so I'm going to have to put that around to Schedule 2. You see now, that's how edit works. So I can change that and it will be that. Then I have to choose it from Schedule 2. There. So we have a Schedule 2 to the contract you'll see as we go through, and you can see it up here. That outlines the duties for the position. Now the school year runs from September to August. Whoops, I jumped ahead here. And I have got yet to get the Vietnamese words in there. Okay, school work hours are in Asia are 40 hours a week plus 4 optional hours that can be used for things like marketing or promotional or field trips or meeting parents and what have you. The performance evaluation is they're guaranteed 1 per year. The salary is paid in most cases 10th of the month. And because this is a foreign license, we get a foreign salary in US dollars. So we can type in, let's say, just $2,000 for easiest numbers. It automatically calculates the yearly salary. And these figures are used by the accounting program component to actually calculate their salaries. Okay, the salary component here, sometimes there is a probationary period. So you might say salary during probation equals, let's say, $1,800 per month. That's negotiable, and that's how it's set up, and that's why the accounting people need access to this information so they can see what's going on. Next, we have the benefits going with this job. And some places there's a housing allowance. It could be a monthly allowance, it could be school supplied housing, it could be paid for by the teacher, or it's not applicable. If we leave it as a monthly allowance, then you would put in an amount. For example, it might be 500,000. I don't know. Vietnamese dong. The return airfare is again arranged and on many different options. Typically, it's paid for and arranged for by the school when someone comes from Canada to an overseas destination. And in many cases, hiring people right from the local environment, it's not applicable. So you have to figure out what it is, how it's set up, and sometimes its incoming is paid by the school outgoing as per departure. So that's kind of done so that if someone leaves prematurely, their airfare isn't paid for already. Okay, statutory holidays. A statutory holiday is a government-dictated holiday. Every country has different. Most countries have about 12 days a year, 1 per month typically, and it varies year to year and nation to nation. And in this case, this is the default that we have in here. The school holidays are days that the school designates for holidays outside the statutory holidays, and typically it's another 3 days a year, and 5 days are off in July as well. And that's typical. Vacation days in some countries, for example, in Vietnam, it's the statutory holidays and sick holidays, or the school holidays, are the vacation days. That's the national standard. That's how it's worked. And then the sick and personal days are additional days that you get. Meal plan, it depends on the school. And again, lunch daily, it could be breakfast daily, lunch and breakfast, lunch, dinner, or none. Whatever the situation is. Some schools have meals, some don't. Taxes typically on a foreign salary the school pays in addition to salary, which is the government taxes, the unemployment premiums. There may be health premiums, although it may be the health plan may be paid for by the school. And then the renewal allowance is that's kind of a bonus. If people are renewed, there's another $1,000, or it may not be applicable. It depends on negotiations between the parties. Professional development is, generally speaking, apply to the school's professional development fund. There is funds depending on what people want to do. They can't dictate it at this point in time, but they're just saying there is funds available if something worthwhile is presented. Personal days are days when you have to take things off, like a few hours, half a day for medication or doctor's appointments, things like that. And the sick days are so many days per year. I think there it's 2 days per year per now. And the tuition for dependents is typically there's no tuition for the first child, 20% for the second, or it's not applicable if there are no students. And the pre-existing conditions, we have learned in the past that if there are pre-existing conditions, perhaps people have a health issue, people have a religious issue. These should be expressed by the person at this point in time, and so you must ask them if there are any conditions or situations that may conflict with the performance of their job. And if they say none and you don't know of any, and conditions, these things do come up, then you have grounds for dismissal or changing or something. But if it is not discussed, there's no middle ground. You just have to live with it. So that's why we suggest asking if there are anything, issues that cause it. For example, if the school has full of stairs and someone doesn't have the vision that they need stairs, or they will meet any stairs and they find they can't walk upstairs, then how can they perform their job? So those are the things that we have to know ahead of time. And you hope, but the best of all, it says none. And the work visa, if you're coming into the country, you have to get a work visa. It's a rubber ball of how you get that, whether you get it when you're coming or not. If you live in the country, sometimes you have it, sometimes you have to leave the country. In general, the school does pay for the work visa. And and lastly, so by that time we have got the whole thing situated, run through, and set up. So that can be put out now. At this point in time, you see the issue of the contract is not offered. We can then click the draft, and we'll let me issue it as a draft or an offer. It's almost the same thing, and a final version. So let us do this as a draft at this point in time, and we will then click the. By the way, the contract type will be pasted in here once we take the next step, and proceed. So we're going to generate a contract now. We're in the position where we can do that. And we get this screen coming up with the type of contract. Because we have a principal's contract is not the same as the person on the front desk, and that's just natural. So we have built this so that we can produce the correct type of contract. So if we, for example, choose what we call the foreign teacher contract, which has both English and Vietnamese. So if we're in Thailand, it would have or English and Thai, or English and Chinese, or something. So it's a good one to take a look at. So if we click on that, we then end up taken straight to the contract page. It's all set up. It's a foreign teacher contract. It's with the Peace Company. The school is called. We therefore have to call it the school. This address, your name, what your job is, and down below in this, you're now called the teacher. There's a date up here installed, which we usually put on the draft, because what the system is doing is reaching into a preferences library and grabbing that contract and dumping it into here. So when we can, in the preferences, update the contract so that subsequent or follow-up contracts would have the new words, whereas the old contracts aren't changed. So you can scan down here, and this just outlines the information and has a space at the bottom for signing. This will compress itself together once it's done. And you can then also check out Schedule Number 2, which comes out to Schedule 2 of the employment contract of Peter Wang. It's a position teacher foreign teaching, and what we can take out of there, I thought we had done that, but we haven't. And you can then read or edit this contract, and this is the whole function of this thing, is that you can edit the contract as it stands. So we can then go back to the contract. Oops.